The Great Hall of Vareth Prime stretched for nearly a kilometer in every direction, its crystalline walls catching the light of 3 distant suns and scattering rainbows across the assembled delegates. 12 species had sent their highest representatives to this place, beings of immense age and terrible power who had shaped the galaxy for 10,000 years. They called themselves the Galactic Conclave, and today they would decide the fate of humanity. Ambassador Chen Wei stood alone in the center of the chamber, surrounded by beings that looked nothing like her. The Cathari delegation floated in their gravity spheres, their tentacles trailing behind them like living silk. The Mordrith sat on their hovering thrones, their insectoid eyes reflecting 1,000 fractured images of the human woman. Before them, the Velthari watched with something that might have been pity in their ancient faces. Chen Wei had been an ambassador for 30 years, and she had never felt so small. The speaker of the conclave, a being of pure energy contained within a shell of living crystal, rose from its position at the base of the Dios, head of the chamber. Its voice echoed not through the air but directly into the minds of every being present. We have observed a species known as humanity for 300 of their years, the speaker announced, and the words carried the weight of absolute authority. We have watched them spread from their birth world to 17 colonies across 4 star systems. Chen Wei kept her face carefully neutral. Though her heart was racing, she knew what was coming. The conclave had made its position clear in 100 small ways over the past decade. Humanity was growing too fast, spreading too quickly, adapting too well. They have proven themselves aggressive in their expansion, the speaker continued. They have shown a capacity for violence that exceeds acceptable parameters for a species of their developmental stage. They have demonstrated an unsettling ability to adopt and modify technologies far beyond what their natural evolution should permit. The Mordrith delegate clicked its mandibles in agreement, producing a sound like breaking bones. They learned our drive technology in a single generation, it said, and the accusation hung in the air like poison. They should have taken 1,000 years to understand those principles. Chen Wei wanted to speak, wanted to defend her people, but the conclave had made the rules of this gathering very clear. She was here to receive their judgment, not to argue against it. The Velthari delegate, a being that looked almost human except for its silver skin and 4 arms, raised one hand. I must register my dissent, it said, and Chen Wei felt a spark of hope. Humanity has shown remarkable potential for growth and cooperation with other species. Their ambassador stands before us with dignity and grace, asking nothing, demanding nothing. Is this the behavior of a species beyond redemption? The Cathari delegate pulsed with bioluminescent contempt. They are young and clever. Nothing more, it said through its translation device. The Vethrani were also young and clever once. The core showed remarkable potential. We know how those stories ended. Chen Wei did not know those names, had never heard them in all her years of studying galactic politics. She filed that information away. Sensing it was important, the speaker raised itself higher, commanding silence. We will now vote on the matter of humanity's future relationship with the Galactic Conclave. One by one, the delegations cast their votes, and one by one, Chen Wei watched her people's hopes crumble. The Mordrith voted for exile. The Cathari voted for exile species after species, each with their own reasons, but all reaching the same conclusion. Humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to grow. Only the Velthari voted against, their delegate bowing its head in what looked like shame. The vote is 11-1 in favor of exile, the speaker announced. Humanity is hereby sentenced to permanent quarantine behind a barrier of folded space. All human citizens currently in galactic territory have 30 standard days to return to their home system. After that time, the barrier will be raised, and humanity will have no further contact with the greater galaxy. Chun-Wei stood perfectly still as the sentence was pronounced. She had expected this, had prepared for it, had even briefed her government on the likely outcome. But knowing something was coming and experiencing it were very different things. The speaker turned its attention directly to her. "Ambassador Chun-Wei, you may now address the conclave if you wish." Every eye in the chamber fixed on her, waiting for the expected response. Some delegations clearly anticipated anger, perhaps threats of retaliation. Others seemed to expect tears and pleas for mercy. Chun-Wei did neither. Instead, she smiled. It was a thin expression, knowing and calm, and it made several of the delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. "I thank the conclave for its consideration," she said, her voice steady and clear. "Humanity will comply with the terms of our exile. We will recall our citizens and prepare for the barrier." She paused, and her smile grew just slightly wider. "I have only one question. If the speaker permits." The crystalline being inclined itself in what might have been a nod. "You spoke of the Vethrani and the Core," Chun-Wei said. "I'm not familiar with those names. Were they also exiled?" The silence that followed her question was profound. Several delegations exchanged glances that suggested she had touched on something forbidden. The speaker's light flickered once before it answered. "That information is not relevant to your situation, Ambassador. The conclave wishes humanity peace in its isolation." Chun-Wei bowed, still smiling that unsettling smile. "Of course," she said. "We wish the conclave the same." She turned and walked from the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet behind her. The 12 elder races watched her go, and more than one felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the great hall. They told themselves it was nothing, that humanity was contained, that the barrier would hold. They did not discuss the two pieces of information they had chosen not to share with the human ambassador first. The barrier was not merely isolation but a death sentence, designed to destabilize Earth's sun over 3 centuries. Second, 17 species had faced this fate before humanity, and not one had survived. The conclave had solved many problems this way, and they had no doubt this solution would prove equally effective. But as Chun-Wei boarded her ship and began the long journey home, she was already composing her report to Earth's government, and in that report, she would write 4 words that would change everything. "They are hiding something." 50 years had passed since the barrier fell around Earth's solar system like a curtain of folded space and impossible physics to the galaxy beyond. Humanity had become nothing more than a memory, a cautionary tale told to young species who grew too ambitious too quickly. Conclave's monitoring probes drifted through the barrier's outer layer, recording what they expected to record: silence, stagnation, a dying world slowly accepting its fate. They saw cities standing quiet. Under gray skies, they saw ships that never left their docks. They saw a species that had given up, but the probe saw only what humanity wanted them to see deep beneath the surface of Earth, in tunnels that stretched for thousands of kilometers. The real work was happening. Don Maya Okonkwo stood before a holographic display that showed the barrier in perfect detail, every fold and twist of warp space mapped with precision. That would have shocked the conclave. "We cracked their containment technology in 8 years," she said to the assembled council of scientists and engineers. "We understand how they fold space, how they manipulate dimensional membranes, how they built this cage around us." General James Chun, grandson of the famous ambassador, leaned forward in his chair. "Can we break through?" Maya shook her head, and frustration flickered across her face. "The barrier itself is too strong," she admitted. "It would take more energy than our sun produces in a century to punch a hole through it." "But that is not the real problem," she gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show Earth's sun in cross-section. Warning indicators pulsed throughout the image. "They did something to our star," Maya said. And her voice carried the cold anger of a scientist who had discovered a terrible truth. The barrier is not just keeping us in. It is slowly destabilizing our sun's core. In approximately 250 years, Sol will go nova, and everything in this system will burn. Silence fell over the council as the weight of her words settled upon them. This was not exile. This was execution. General Chung was the first to speak, and his voice was steady despite the horror in his eyes. "Can we stop it?" "No," Maya said simply. "The process is already too advanced. Even if we broke the barrier tomorrow, our sun is dying." The council members looked at each other, and in their faces was the same expression that had defined humanity throughout its history. Not despair, but defiance. Chancellor Amaran Daye, the leader of Earth's unified government, rose from her seat. She was 70 years old, and she had spent her entire adult life preparing for this moment. "Then we do not stay here," she said. "We leave." "But the barrier." One counselor started to object. "The barrier prevents us from leaving through normal space." Amara interrupted. "Dr. Okonkwo, you said you understand how they fold space. Does that understanding work in other directions?" Maya's eyes widened as she grasped what the Chancellor was suggesting. "We cannot punch through the barrier," she said slowly, "but we might be able to go around it. The conclave folds space in 3 dimensions, but theoretical physics suggests there are more dimensions than 3. If we could learn to fold space in a 4th dimension, we could step outside their barrier entirely." "How long?" General Chun asked. Maya did the calculations in her head, and a smile began to spread across her face. "With full resources and complete cooperation from every nation on Earth, maybe 50 years to develop the theory. Another 20 to build the first ships." The Chancellor nodded. "Then we have time." "Not much, but enough." She turned to address the full council. "From this day forward, every resource humanity possesses goes toward one goal: survival. We build underground, away from their probes. We let them think we have given up, and when we are ready, we leave this cage and find a new home among the stars." The years that followed were the hardest in human history. Billions of people lived their lives under the gray skies, maintaining the illusion of defeat while working in secret toward salvation. Children were born who knew nothing but the tunnels, who learned physics and engineering before they learned to read. Every person had a role. Every resource had a purpose, and slowly, impossibly, humanity began to succeed. The first dimensional fold happened 73 years after the barrier fell. A small probe, no bigger than a human hand, vanished from a laboratory deep beneath the Pacific Ocean and reappeared 3 seconds later in orbit around Neptune. Completely outside the barrier, scientists wept when they received its signal. Engineers began designing ships that very day, but even as they celebrated, Maya Okonkwo, now an old woman of 90 years, made another discovery while mapping the space beyond the barrier. Her instruments detected something that should not exist: faint energy signatures bearing markers that matched extinct species in the conclave's historical records. "Someone else is out there," she told the council, a voice trembling with excitement and fear. "Someone the conclave thought they killed. Chancellor Daye's successor, her daughter Kira." Understood immediately. "They lied to us," Kira said. "They said exile meant isolation. They said we would be alone. But there are others. Other species who face the same fate we face now. Can we find them?" Maya nodded slowly. "It will take time," she said. "But yes, we can find them. And if they survived, we can learn how they did it." The probe ships launched 10 years later, slipping through dimensions the conclave had never imagined, searching for the survivors of galactic genocide behind them. Earth continued its performance of defeat, but beneath the surface, humanity was building an ark. A fleet of ships that would carry their species to the stars when the time was right. They would not die in this cage. They would not burn with their sun. They would survive. And they would remember. And someday, they would return to ask the conclave a very simple question. Why did you think you could kill us and get away with it? The probes flew outward into the dark, carrying humanity's hope with them, and in the space between dimensions, something ancient stirred and began to pay attention. 180 years had passed since humanity's exile, and the galaxy had mostly forgotten that such a species had ever existed. The Kadari merchant captain Viralis was thinking about nothing more important than his next cargo run when his ship's sensors detected an impossible signal. He was traveling through dead space, a region at the edge of mapped territory where no species had ever established colonies. The signal should not exist, but there it was, repeating on the universal trade frequency that all spacefaring species used. We remember. Do you? Viralis stared at the words scrolling across his display, his tentacles going rigid with shock. The language was unmistakable. It was written in the standard galactic trade tongue, the language that only species permitted in galactic society were taught, and it was coming from a region of space that should be completely empty. He reported the signal to the conclave's monitoring authority, as all good citizens were required to do. The response came within hours. The signal was an anomaly, an echo of ancient transmissions bouncing off cosmic dust. He was ordered to forget about it and continue his route. Viralis obeyed, but he never forgot those words. He was not the only one to receive strange messages in the following years. A Mordrith mining colony reported finding refined metals in an asteroid field they had surveyed as barren just decades before. A Kethari science vessel discovered an abandoned station in a system that had no history of habitation. Its technology unfamiliar, but clearly advanced. Trade goods began appearing in fringe markets, devices and materials that no known species could have manufactured, bearing no maker's marks or origin stamps. The conclave dismissed each report as unconnected, as coincidence, as the paranoid imaginings of beings who spent too long in the empty spaces between stars. But the Velthari, who had voted against humanity's exile so long ago, began to investigate. Ambassador Kethral was the current Velthari representative to the conclave, and she had inherited her predecessor's guilt over what had been done to the humans. When the reports of strange signals and mysterious artifacts reached her, she saw a pattern that her colleagues refused to acknowledge. She began sending her own probes to the regions where the anomalies had been detected. What she found terrified her. The probes did not return with data. They simply vanished, disappearing from sensor contact as if they had never existed. But before they vanished, each probe sent back the same final image, a human face. Smiling, Kethral brought her findings to a secret meeting with her most trusted advisors. They survived, she said, and her voice was heavy with equal parts wonder and dread. The humans not only survived their exile, they escaped it. Her senior advisor, a being as old as she was, shook his head in disbelief. Impossible, he said. The barrier technology has never failed. We have used it on 17 species across 10,000 years. None have ever escaped. None have ever survived. Kethral pulled up the image her probes had captured, the human face frozen in that knowing smile. Then explain this, she said. Explain the signals, the artifacts, the impossible presence of human technology in regions of space they should never have been able to reach. She leaned forward, and her silver skin seemed to pale with fear. And explain why they are not trying to hide. Her advisor studied the image for a long moment. What do you mean? I mean, they want us to know, Kethral said. They are leaving these signals, these artifacts, these traces for us to find. They could hide completely if they wished. The fact that our probes detected nothing until the last moment proves they have technology beyond our understanding. But they chose to let us see, just enough to know they exist. Why would they do that? Because they want us to be afraid. Our advisor whispered. Catherall nodded slowly. They are not hiding from us, she said. They are watching us. They are learning everything about us, our technology, our politics, our secrets. And we have no idea how long they have been doing it. She called up more data, projections and analyses that painted a picture too disturbing to share. With the full conclave, I believe, they have built an entire civilization in the spaces between dimensions. She said, they are not just surviving, they are thriving. And they are gathering allies. Allies? Catherall hesitated, knowing what she was about to say would sound like madness. The Vethrani, she said. The core. All the species we have exiled over the millennia. I believe the humans are finding them. Her advisor stood abruptly, his forearms trembling. That is impossible, he said. Those species are dead. The solar destabilization protocol has a 100% success rate. No exiled species has ever survived beyond 3 centuries. Are you certain of that? Catherall asked quietly. Have we ever actually confirmed their deaths, or have we simply assumed that our technology worked as intended? The silence that followed was answer enough somewhere out in the darkness. Humanity was building something the Conclave could not imagine. They were reaching out to the forgotten, the condemned, the species that the galaxy's rulers had decided did not deserve to exist. And they were coming back, not with weapons, not with fleets, but with something far more dangerous. The truth, Catherall made a decision in that moment. She would not tell the Conclave what she had discovered. Instead, she would wait and watch, because if humanity was truly gathering the survivors of galactic genocide, if they were truly building an alliance of the exiled, then perhaps, just perhaps, the galaxy's oldest crime was about to be exposed. And she wanted to be on the right side when that happened in the spaces between dimensions. Humanity smiled its knowing smile and continued its work. The day of reckoning was coming, and the Conclave had no idea how close it truly was. The ship drifted in the space between realities, a place that existed in no dimension the Conclave had ever mapped. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood on its bridge, watching through the viewing port as another vessel emerged from the dimensional fold, a ship of ancient design. Its hull scarred by centuries of desperate flight, the Vethrani had been found. Tanaka was the great-granddaughter of refugees who had been evacuated from the colonies in humanity's final days of galactic presence. She had grown up on stories of the exile, of the barrier, of the Conclave's betrayal. Now she commanded the fleet that would write the next chapter of that story. They, hailing us, her communications officer, reported. Tanaka nodded. Put them through. The image that appeared on her screen was not what she had expected. Vethrani were tall and thin, with skin like polished stone and eyes that burned with inner light. 3,000 of them remained, the last survivors of a species that had once numbered in the billions. Their leader, a being called Soroth, spoke in a voice like grinding gravel. You are the humans, it said, and there was wonder in its tone. We heard rumors in the long dark, whispers of a species that refused to die. We thought they were only stories. Tanaka smiled, the same smile her ancestor Chen Wei had worn before the Conclave 2 centuries ago. We are not stories, she said. We are very real, and we have been looking for you. Soroth's burning eyes flickered with emotions that Tanaka could not name. Looking for us? It repeated. Why? Because the Conclave told us we were alone, Tanaka said. They told us that exile meant isolation, that we would never see another species again. But they also told us that no one had ever faced this fate before. They lied. They lied about many things, Soroth agreed. and ancient bitterness crept into its voice. They told our people that the barrier was for our own protection. They said we had become too aggressive, too dangerous to exist alongside the elder races. They did not tell us that our son would be murdered. Tanaka nodded, feeling the weight of shared suffering settle between them. How did you survive? We almost did not, Soreth admitted, when we discovered what was happening to our star. We had less than 50 years to act. We built tomb ships, vessels designed to preserve our people in stasis until we could find a way to escape. Most of them failed. Only 3 reached the dimensional fold before the barrier made transit impossible. 3,000 souls out of 8 billion. The numbers hit Tanaka like a physical blow. 3,000 survivors from a civilization that had once spanned 100 worlds. The Conclave had not just exiled the Vethrani. They had slaughtered them. We found others, Tanaka said. And she watched hope kindle in those burning eyes. The core tunneled deep into their dying world and found a way to shift their entire population into a pocket dimension. The Mithrani built generation ships that traveled so slowly the Conclave's monitoring systems never detected their escape. There are 11 other species that we have located so far, all survivors of the Conclave's exile protocol. Soreth was silent for a long moment. Why are you gathering us? It finally asked, what do you intend to do? Tanaka straightened, and her voice took on the formal tone of official pronouncement. The survivors of the Conclave's genocide have been invited to a council, she said. Humanity is proposing an alliance, a coalition of the exiled. We believe it is time to decide what happens next. The council convened on a station humanity had built in the dimensional fold, a place that could not be detected by any technology. The Conclave possessed representatives of 12 exiled species sat in a circle, their forms so varied that no 2 looked even slightly alike. Yuki Tanaka stood at the center and addressed them all. We have all suffered at the hands of the Conclave, she said. We have all lost worlds, lost peoples, lost futures that should have been ours. We have spent centuries hiding in the spaces between realities, surviving when we were meant to die. But now we have a choice, she gestured. And a holographic display appeared showing the galaxy in all its vastness. We could remain hidden forever, she continued. We could build our own civilization in the shadows, watching the Conclave grow old and fade away. We are beyond their reach now. They cannot hurt us again. In time, they would forget we ever existed, and we would be free to live in peace. She paused, and her expression hardened into something fierce. But that is not justice, she said. That is surrender. The representatives stirred, and Tanaka could feel their attention sharpening. While we hide, the Conclave continues to rule the galaxy, she said. While we count ourselves fortunate to have survived, they are watching new species emerge and asking themselves the same question they asked about all of us. Is this one too dangerous to exist? She pulled up an image of young insectoid species on a world near the galactic rim, just beginning to develop space travel. The Kalori, Tanaka said. They have done nothing wrong except grow too fast and adapt too well. Sound familiar? The Conclave has already begun monitoring them. In 50 years, perhaps 100, they will face the same choice we faced: submit to limitation or face exile. And if they face exile, they will face the same slow death that was meant for all of us. She looked around the circle, meeting every alien eye. I am not proposing revenge, she said. I am not asking you to help humanity wage war against the Conclave. War would make us no better than them. What I am proposing is something far more dangerous. The truth. A truth. Murmur ran through the assembled representatives. We have spent 2 centuries gathering information. Tanaka continued. We have infiltrated the Conclave's archives, copied their hidden records, documented every crime they have committed in 10,000 years of rule. We know who voted for each exile. We know how they engineered each solar death. We know everything." She smiled. And it was not a kind expression. "The younger species of the galaxy do not know what the conclave truly is," she said. "They think the elder races are wise and benevolent, guardians of peace and order. They do not know about the 17 species that were condemned to death for the crime of being too successful. They do not know that the conclave they trust has been committing genocide for millennia. We are going to tell them. The vote that followed was unanimous. The survivors of galactic genocide would return to the galaxy that had tried to kill them, and they would bring the truth with them." The Galactic Conclaves. Millennial celebration was the greatest gathering of power the galaxy had ever seen. 10,000 years of peace and order. The elder races told themselves 10,000 years of wise stewardship, of guiding the younger species towards civilization. Every conclave homeworld sent its highest representatives to Verith Prime, the same station where humanity had received its death sentence 2 centuries before. The crystalline halls were filled with beings of immense age and terrible power. Congratulating themselves on their success, they had built something beautiful. They believed they had created a galaxy where dangerous species could be quietly removed and forgotten. The system worked. It had always worked as the celebration reached its height. A Mordrith technician noticed something strange on his monitoring display. The barrier around Earth's solar system, the same barrier they checked every decade as a matter of routine, was fluctuating, probably an instrument error, his supervisor said when he reported it. "Those barriers are unbreakable. Run a diagnostic and file a report." The technician obeyed. But before his diagnostic could complete, the barrier collapsed entirely, not from within, but from everywhere at once in the celebration hall. The lights flickered. The conclave representatives fell silent, confusion rippling through their ranks. Then the dimensional fold opened, and humanity returned. Ships emerged from the space between realities above every conclave homeworld simultaneously, thousands of vessels appearing in the skies of 100 worlds at the exact same moment. The galaxy's communication networks erupted with a single message, broadcast on every frequency in every language to every species with the technology to receive it. "We are humanity," the message said. "We were exiled by the Galactic Conclave 200 years ago. We were sentenced to die in silence. We survived, and we are not alone." In the celebration hall, the conclave's representatives watched in stunned horror as holographic images appeared above them. The Thrani species they had pronounced extinct 4,000 years ago stood proud and alive. The poor erased from galactic history 6,000 years before that raised their claws in greeting 11 other species, each supposedly dead for millennia, each standing alongside the humans who had found them. "You told the galaxy that we were too dangerous to exist," the message continued. "You said our exile was necessary for the peace and security of all civilized species. You did not tell them that exile meant death. You did not tell them that you have been quietly murdering entire civilizations for 10,000 years." The holographic display shifted, and new images appeared. The hidden archives, the secret votes, the engineering specifications for solar destabilization. Every lie the conclave had ever told was suddenly visible to every being in the galaxy. The Cathari delegate rose from its gravity sphere, tentacles flailing in agitation. "This is an attack," it shouted. "They are trying to destabilize our government with lies." "Lies?" A new voice said. A human woman materialized in the center of the hall. Holographic projection so detailed that she seemed almost solid. She was young, perhaps 30 years old by human standards, with dark eyes and a knowing smile that several elder delegates found disturbingly familiar. "Allow me to introduce myself," she said. I am Ambassador Sarah Chun, great-great-granddaughter of Ambassador Chen Wei, who stood in this very hall 2 centuries ago to receive your sentence of death. She turned slowly, meeting every eye in the chamber. My ancestor asked you a question before she left this place, Sarah said. She asked about the Vethrani and the core. You told her that information was not relevant. You lied. She gestured, and the holographic display zoomed in on a single document. Vote record from the Conclave's sealed archives. This is the vote that condemned the Vethrani to extinction, she said. Notice anything interesting about it? The Mordrith delegate who had spoken earlier went very still as it saw its own species listed among the votes for exile. Your ancestors murdered an entire civilization, Sarah said, and then they erased every record of that civilization's existence. They told the galaxy that the Vethrani had simply died out naturally, victims of their own evolutionary failures. They did the same thing 16 more times, and they planned to do it to us. The Speaker of the Conclave, the same being of living crystal that had pronounced humanity's sentence, rose from its position. What do you want? It asked, and for the first time in 10,000 years. There was fear in its voice. Sarah smiled, that same thin, knowing smile that had passed down through 4 generations of her family. We want 2 things, she said. First, we want the Conclave's authority over galactic society to end. No more secret votes on which species deserve to live. No more barriers and slow murders disguised as exile. The younger races will be told the truth about what you have done, and they will be allowed to choose their own paths forward. The elder delegates stirred uneasily. This was not the revenge they had expected. This was something far worse. This was judgment. Second, Sarah continued, we want a seat at whatever table replaces this one. Humanity and our fellow survivors will participate in building the new galactic order, not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as equals. Every species with the ability to reach the stars will have a voice in shaping the future. She paused, and her expression softened slightly. We have had 200 years to plan our revenge, she said. We could have built weapons. We could have created war fleets that would have torn your civilizations apart. We chose not to. We chose truth instead. We chose to expose your crimes and let the galaxy decide how to respond. She turned to face the speaker directly. You voted for our exile, she said. You expected us to die quietly. You did not expect us to find each other. And you certainly did not expect us to come back with forgiveness in our hearts instead of weapons in our hands. The speaker was silent for a long moment. Why? It finally asked, why show mercy to those who tried to kill you? Sarah's smile faded, replaced by an expression of profound sadness. Because we have seen what hatred does, she said. We have seen what happens when civilizations decide that other species are too dangerous to exist. We have buried too many of our people and mourned too many lost worlds to repeat the same mistakes. She looked around the chamber one final time. The celebration is over, she said. The lies are exposed. What happens next is up to all of us, not just the elder races, but every species that calls this galaxy home. The Conclave's rule is finished. A new era begins today. The holographic projection faded, leaving the elder delegates standing in stunned silence, outside on 1,000 worlds. Billions of beings watched the archived footage of the Conclave's crimes and understood for the first time what their trusted rulers truly were. The celebration became a trial. The peace became a reckoning, and humanity, at last, took its rightful place among the stars, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as the species that had survived the impossible and chosen to build something better. The galaxy would never be the same, and that, humanity decided, was exactly as it should be.